The title of today's live is In What Way Am I Making This Harder Than It Needs to Be? And I want you to think about that question as we go through. I'm going to share a story that brings us up for me. In what way am I making this harder than it needs to be? I used to believe that my achievements determined value, and not just my achievements, but other people's achievements determined their value. And I just used to judge how good of an achievement did people have, and it determined how valuable they were. It was a very shallow way of living life, a very selfish way of living life. But people who achieved a lot, I saw as more valuable. This comes back to a distinction that I learned a couple of years ago from my coach, Tracy Schunkweiler, who shared with me the distinction of human doing versus human being. And human doing is I am the sum of my achievements. And a human being is I am a human being. I make mistakes. Imperfection is a nature of being a human, while a human doing just looks at achievements, looks at perfection, looks at accomplishments, and doesn't take into account the human beingness of life. And so I was very focused on the human doing in my life. And for me, the more complex an achievement was, the more complicated it was, the more valuable that person was. And so I found a way, unknowingly, I was on a mission to complicate things so that when I achieved them, I felt better about myself because they were more complicated, they're more complex, they were harder to achieve, and therefore, if they were harder to achieve, it meant I was more valuable. And I see that now looking back in retrospect, that caused a lot of frustration, caused a lot of tension in my life, but it was certainly a way that I lived for 30 plus years. Was the harder it was to do something, the more valuable it was. It didn't matter what the actual result was, it just mattered how hard it was. And I've learned the value of simplicity. Steve Jobs has a quote that says something like, one of the hardest things to do is simplify our thinking. But once we simplify our thinking, we can move mountains. And I've seen that so true in my life as I've been on a journey to simplify my thinking. It takes intentionality to simplify thinking. And it takes intentionality to simplify anything. It takes intentionality to simplify any business process. It's easy to just add in the layers, and that seems like a good feature. That seems like a good feature. This seems like a good person to add to the team, and it's easy to add. But the mantra of what really matters is less is more. The mantra of what really matters is to get to the core of what's simple, to get to the core of what really matters and stick with that and eliminate as much complexity as possible. But let's go back to my story. In what way am I making this harder than it needs to be? This is a question I ask my clients because what I know about high achieving, high performing people, like my clients, is that we've made a pattern of behavior in our lives of complicating things. That's part of why we've been successful, because we've tackled complicated things. But what got me here won't get me there. And so that's true for me, that's true for you, it's true for my clients. And so one of the things I really help my clients with is just simply peeling back all the extra stuff in their lives, all the extra stuff in their thinking, all the extra stuff in their process, and let's get down to what really matters at the core of the simplicity. So here's why I'm talking about this today, my story. So a couple months ago, I was talking with several of my coaching peers, and we are hosting a conference, an intensive for ourselves this summer. There's 8 or 9 of us in the group, and we're going to Houston to do the conference, and everybody is staying at an Airbnb together. It's a mixed company, and to me, it's uncomfortable to stay at an Airbnb with mixed company, especially when my wife isn't there. Now, this isn't about whether you feel uncomfortable or not with that. That's my decision, and I'm certainly not judging anybody who doesn't feel uncomfortable with that. But to me, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to stay in that situation, and so I'm staying at a friend's house close by. But in my uncomfortability around that, I had not mentioned it to Katie because I projected on her that it'd be an uncomfortable conversation for her if I just asked her about it. So today, on the way back from Charlotte, I asked her, and she shared her opinion with me. And she said, "Why did you wait 2 months to ask me this question?" And I said, because it's really uncomfortable for me. It's an uncomfortable situation for me. And she said, you could have just asked me like 2 months ago when this came up. Hey, Katie, let me run something by you. What do you think about this? And do you know, it had never occurred to me that I could have kept it that simple. Instead, in my thinking just got really complicated about this. And I felt uncomfortable, which means my thinking was very uncomfortable and complex. And I didn't do the work of simplifying my thinking and realizing that I was projecting my discomfort onto Katie. And the reason that I avoided the conversation for 2 months was because, to me, it was two uncomfortable conversations, or it was two people having an uncomfortable conversation with each other. And I realize this is a pattern of behavior that by default I fall into. And again, there's no judgment around this. It's just something that I'm observing, and I recognize that I can grow through. In what way am I making this more difficult, or in what way am I making this harder than it needs to be? And I got to the end of the conversation with Katie, and it wasn't a hard conversation. It wasn't an uncomfortable conversation. It was really just a projection of my thinking. It really was just uncomfortable in my thinking. And I realized that I've done this in business, I've done this in relationships, I've done this in music, I've done this in any process. Is my default mode is to go to complex first. And it takes intentionality to peel all that away and get down to simplified thinking. And sometimes it's really hard to identify simplified thinking on our own. And that's where it's helpful to have somebody step into the thinking, or not step into the thinking with us, but step into the situation with us and just let me unload my thinking to you, and you tell me where you see complicated thinking, and you help me peel back the complicated thinking and get down to the core of what's simple. And then once we get down to the core of what's simple, we get to stay there. And we get to move mountains, as Steve Jobs says. So what I realized for me is when something feels uncomfortable, when something feels difficult, I complicate it. So I can beat around the bush, I make it a bigger deal than it needs to be, and I keep myself from getting to the simplicity of what really matters, because sometimes it's difficult. It's hard to get to the simplicity of what matters, and I guess in a sense it's a self-preservation mode to keep it complicated, because I feel, one, it makes me feel important that I'm doing something complicated, even if I'm the one that's making it complicated, and two, maybe there's a fear of what I might actually find at what's down to the core if I really get down to the simplification of it. But I'm on a mission to be a voice and not an echo. And that is a very simplified way of what I am doing in the world. To be a voice, not an echo. But you think about an echo, and everybody's echoing. It's very complicated. It's very complex. It's very cacophony is the word that comes to mind. There's a lot of noise around that. An echo is complicated. A voice that cuts through the noise, that's simple. And to me, I was thinking about this. Why is simplicity so important? I think there's a lot of reasons that we could come up with, but I thought of three quickly. One, it makes success repeatable. When I know that A plus B always equals C, and I can repeat A plus B, I always get C. Two of the coaches that I know who are very, very good in their enrolling conversations and their consultations, a couple years into their coaching career, they took everything off the table when it came to their consultations, and they only put back onto the table into their consultations exactly what mattered the most. And the reason they're so successful in their enrollment conversations is because simple. They've kept it simple. And when they complicate it, when I complicate things, success becomes harder. So simplicity makes success repeatable. Simplicity also makes enrolling other people feasible. When I think about enrolling other people on my mission, if my mission is very complicated to understand, it was very complex to communicate to somebody, people are going to tune out. People are drawn to something that is simple. People want to buy into something that they can understand quickly and easily. And yes, there might be a depth to it that it might take longer to fully understand. But ultimately, it's easy. It makes enrolling other people feasible when it's simple. It's also attractive. Simplicity is very attractive. In a world of complexity, and if you look around the world around us today, it's very complex. There's a lot of extra stuff going on, a lot of drama, a lot of tension, a lot of frustration. In a world of complexity, simplicity is just a breath of fresh air. And one of the best ways that I can serve is to keep things simple. The best way that I can serve is to work with my clients or work with anybody that I'm talking to on helping them simplify their thinking. We all have areas in our life where we're making things harder than it needs to be. So my question to you is, in what way are you making things harder than it needs to be? And what might the benefit be for you of simplifying that? I'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.